Thank you so much for taking time to come here. Like I said, to have a company that doesn't just work in Saskatchewan, but all over the world, and also to be such a respected business, it's pretty cool to have you. So thanks for coming.
Oh, thanks for having us, and thanks for coming on a day like today. Nice, beautiful day, and you're here.
Yeah, we'll open the doors and let them have drinks in the patio right after.
Okay, talking into it.
So why don't we start, Brandon, let's start with where you came from. Are you from Saskatchewan, Saskatoon?
Yeah, no, from Moose Jaw.
Moose Jaw?
Yeah.
You lived in the tunnels?
Not near the tunnels, yes.
Charlotte's restaurant?
Well, I think Charlotte's was after I was gone, so yeah, I do know it though. My dad still lives there.
Oh, sweet. So what brought you to Saskatoon then? Was it school?
University. So came to university and started in physics. Didn't know that I didn't want to be a physics teacher because that's pretty much all you can do with that. So got my degree in geophysics and went to Cameco and worked up north for a bit. It was El Dorado at the time.
Okay, I was not expecting physics. So you took physics, worked for Cameco, which is another big company, and you were up there. Was it just not feeling right?
No,
you weren't interested?
It was, you know, one of my co-students who was an engineer decided that he wanted to try this business, and so it was recycling toner cartridges. So our first company was called Delron Laser Products, and we recycled toner cartridges. We were just across on 45th on the other side.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how long did you do that then?
So we, you know, that started in '89. I think we had this idea if we could just recycle the university's toner cartridges, it would work out.
Yeah.
But you know, it's hard at the university. At the time, that was it before recycling was in vogue, so nobody wanted to recycle. And they, you know, so the thing was you could save money, but you know, it was tough. People didn't want to save money at the university that much either at the time, even. So we started to sell computers, and so it turned into Delron Computers. Yeah.
So you went from physics to Cameco to selling recycling toner, and then selling computers?
That's right.
So how long did you do that for?
Well, you know, that was from '89 to about '99, and I don't know if you guys, most people might be old enough to either remember or not, but at that time there was, you know, just IBM really made computers, and so there was a few others. There was HP and Compaq were starting to come out, so we started to make computers and you know, built them ourselves. And then we did that till about 1999. I decided that I wanted to get into a different business because, you know, Future Shop and big box stores were coming in, single-digit margins. So I went to work at one of my customers' companies called Point 2. So I don't know, they were a technology software company. They were making software for Caterpillar, so they built Caterpillar's used global trading system, so catused.com. So this is where the Caterpillar dealers would trade their graders and dozers. So you could go on and, you know, buy a D1011R, which is like $1 million dozer, and you know, usually they would go around the world, so people would find equipment on there, and that's what we were building. And one of the folks at Point 2 in about 2001 came to me and said, "Hey, you know, real estate's a lot like heavy equipment." I said, "What?" And it was John Fothergill, and what he meant was that the internet's good for finding things online. So you know how you search for those big heavy equipment, you can do the same thing for houses. And so at the time we started to you know, do a prototype where we would use the software for realtors to build their own website, and then they'd put their listings in there and syndicate them to, you know, MLSs. And so, you know, that turned into what we did at Point 2, and that's where I really got into software. And when I left Point 2 in 2007, we had about 165,000 realtors in 65 countries using the software, of which I think about 25,000 were paying. And then that ended up selling to a company called Yardi Systems, and then started Vendasta.
So, I mean, we're going to get to Vendasta, and I should have mentioned in the intro that Vendasta won the Business of the Year award this year for the SABEX Awards this year, 2017. So, I mean, even though, give them a round of applause. So
there's our newest partner, T-Bone.
Yeah, there you go.
Shout out.
T-Bone's the greatest.
Yeah,
honestly, awesome. He's the greatest. So since you've said, you know, in hindsight, Cameco would have been a great company to start, but it's not like you've ended up in.
Oh no,
you're doing okay.
I mean, I wouldn't change anything. I just think that, you know, as far as the companies go, Cameco would have been a great company for anyone.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So you stopped selling computers. after 10 years in that business,
Yep.
started getting into software. How do you just start getting into software?
Well, you know, and I didn't stop with computers. Miles Johnson, who was my business partner at the time, kept the company running. I think it ran as, they got rid of the retail, and it ran as Metaphor for a long time until just maybe even 3 years ago. But what we had seen at the time was the internet was coming along. I don't remember up to the 2000.com crash back in the time. And, you know, I'd wanted to get involved in that and felt like when the crash came that, boy, I really missed that opportunity. So I knew it would happen again, and that it wasn't, you know, that's Amara's law, that people always tend to they overestimate technology in the short term and underestimate the effects in the long term.
Yeah.
So in the short term, they think, wow, this is going to be great. And then didn't really change that much. And then you look back 10 years later and everything's changed. Mm-hmm. And that's what software and, you know, the internet, Google, iPhone has done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you just start doing software? Like you and your business partner, obviously you're now thinking, I'm looking into the software thing. This is pretty interesting.
Sure.
At that point, 2000s, I mean, that was still when you'd get your CD for AOL. You remember that?
Yeah,
you get the CD to get internet.
Hundreds of those.
Yeah, I
never want to throw those away.
Yeah, it's like Columbia House. How many people got one Columbia House membership? Not one person. And how many people paid for those CDs? Not one person. Anyway. So
they don't even collect. The collectors wouldn't even go after those people anymore.
Yeah, when they're looking at their names, I don't think Barf Wigginson exists. Anyway, that was just a random name. That's why I'm not a good criminal. Barf? Anyway, just kidding. So you're now looking at software. You're seeing the potential, right? You've had some exposure.
Yeah.
So how did that start then? Like, did you start fooling around with it, or did you meet some software?
Oh, yeah, like I said, so I had a customer, and he was. One of the founders of Point Two, and he was coming in and buying computers, and he had this problem, and I actually had this young kid working for me, and he was really smart, but it's funny how this happened. So this guy came, the founder of Point Two came in, and one of my kids in the service department basically told him, "You're stupid," you know, because the way they do it, it's like you just don't understand. And so he was very upset because he'd bought a lot of things, and he wanted me to fire the kid. And I was like, "Okay, just wait. I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm sure it was a misunderstanding." So I brought him in, and we sat down, and he talked to the kid. And the next thing you know, I ended up hiring him to solve this problem. And he did this. He developed what was called a photo uploader piece of software where it could take the photo and compress it before it went up on the internet. Because back then we were using modems, and it took a really long time to send a digital picture up. And so he had done this when you know, this guy had spent a lot of money looking for people to do this, couldn't find anyone to do it, and this kid did it for him. And then he ended up going to work at Point Two. And I was interested in what they were doing, and so when I decided to get out and sell my half of the business to Miles, I thought, well, I want to get in software. I'll go here for a while. I had some other ideas, but I went there.
So then you start now working for another business?
Right. So that's where at Point Two they were building this thing for heavy equipment.
Okay.
I went there, and within a year I was building their real estate division. So I was sort of charged with that.
Okay.
So I was the COO at Point Two. We built out the real estate, and then by 2007. The real estate was 90% of the business, and the heavy equipment was just something that we did on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Point Two, is that local? That's a Saskatoon?
Yeah. Now it's sold to a company called Yardi Systems, a big American company, and they're still around. They're in. They still have an office here. They do different kind of software, but they're in Stonebridge.
Okay. So now you've had your hands in a couple different areas.
Yep.
And you've seen success at this point in your career in each of them. Sometimes quicker, sometimes a little slower, but you've seen some success. You put some time in. At which point, now that you're kind of running this fairly booming part of Point Two business, that you thought, I should start thinking about something different?
Well, I mean, there's a story there, and some people might know it. It's the founder got into some legal trouble, not related to the business or anything. And
tell us more. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay. That's fair.
Google it, you'd see it. Anyway, and long story short, there's a couple of us wanted to actually buy the business, and they weren't really interested in selling it. So we said, you know what? That's fine. We'll just part ways, and we'll go build our own software company, which was a hard decision at the time. You know, I had So and
did you have kids at that point?
Yeah, well, I had a lot. I had lots of kids.
Okay, good.
Well, I have them from 25 to 9.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
At that time, the 9-year-old was she was actually in my wife's tummy.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a stretch.
So we had to leave and start the business, and we had to do some consulting work to eat. So we did some work for Ritchie Brothers, and so as we did that, we looked to raise some money to do our real idea, which is not what we do now, by the way. It was going to be a completely different thing.
So why? Was it the original idea sounded like it had some legs and it ended up not, or through that discovery you found a better...
Well, I mean, it's like everything. The path from A to B is never straight. And our idea was at the time, it was going to be called My Front Steps. It was going to be a social network for homeowners. Where as a homeowner, you could, you could look at other people's homes to get ideas and inspiration for decoration. But more importantly, you'd be able to find a service provider like a contractor, a painter, a plumber, a realtor that your friends had used and trusted. Mm-hmm. And then on the service provider side, all those people were going to give this free tool so they could monitor what people were saying about them, a reputation tool. We're going to connect the two together and try to monetize that transaction. So House, Thumbtack, those are companies that do that today. Yep. So we were a little ahead of our time because people didn't want to share their home online. But what we found was this huge demand for reputation intelligence. This free tool we had where businesses could monitor what people were saying about them started to pop up everywhere. We had users in France and users in Brazil and users all over the world. And it was free, and we'd raised a little money, and so we needed to pivot. And so we pivoted to say, we'll build this tool for those small businesses. But because we'd sold to small businesses in the past, we knew it was like herding cats. These realtors, like small businesses, everyone's busy, right? They got things to do, and technology's on the bottom burner, the back burner for them. And so we didn't want to sell directly to small businesses. We wanted to find somebody who already sold to them. So we chose, that whole sort of marketing stack. We wanted to see who already sells that, and so, but who really needs to change. And so we looked to industries that were being disrupted. So that would be like newspapers and yellow page companies, because their revenue was falling off a cliff, because their advertising wasn't working anymore. And the reason it wasn't working anymore was because, back in the day, when you used to, before the internet, before the phone, before Google, you advertised in the phone book or in the newspaper, and if someone saw that and wanted your product, what could they do? They could call you, or they could come see you. It's all the choices they had. Maybe they could talk to a friend.
And now we don't want either of those to happen. Don't call us or come see us.
Just take your phone. See, I'm touching your phone. You don't like that.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
Just don't go in the private. Don't go in the private vault.
So now what you do is you go on your phone and you search for the company, right? So if I see an ad for Winter Tires, I don't probably remember OK Tires or Kel Tire. What I do is I go and look Winter Tires, and if it was OK Tires ad and I find Kel Tire, they've just, OK Tires, because they have a bad listing, has just paid for Kel Tire's customer, right? So first you advertise so that people know about you. Then you have a listing so you can be found, and then you see, and after they find you, because they have to find you, because the best place to hide a dead body is on the second page of the Google search results. So once they find you, then they have to like you, and they say, oh, I really like that company. It's to trust you, so the reputation, and then social, do they like you? Then website, can you convert them? And then your CRM loyalty program, can you keep them? So that's sort of the marketing stack, and that's what our pivot was. We want to sell that marketing stack, and we want to find people who already sell advertising, and it's not working good, and say, this can make your advertising work well. Sell this stuff. And so that's, when we started, we went to newspapers and yellow pages, and because in the U.S. it was accelerated, that's why 95% of our revenue is in the U.S. right now. Okay. I like to think about that frog analogy, where you put a frog in the water and heat it up. It'll heat up slowly and boil to death and not jump out. But if you take the frog and put it in the boiling water, it'll just jump out. Yeah. Well, in Canada, the newspapers have sort of been in that boiling water, like slowly heating water, so they haven't really done anything. But in the U.S., it happened fast enough that they wanted to make change. So that's where our biggest customers started.
So I don't understand enough about the financial part, and your CFO's here, but did the dollar help that as well? Does the dollar help that business as well in the States at this point?
Well, right now,
Or is that just gravy for you because you're charging U.S., right?
We charge U.S. and we pay in Canadian.
Perfect.
It's fantastic.
That is fantastic. Good for you. Man, I wish I could. Yeah, that's incredible.
It's only bad if you go on a holiday.
Yeah, that's fair. So, I mean, so now you're looking at this part of the business, which has obviously morphed into Vendasta over the years, right? So how did, like, I mean, a lot of people have great ideas, and that's the difference between a successful entrepreneur and a regular person, is everybody has a good idea, whether it comes out of, like, road rage as you're driving or just by chance. But not many people know how to make the rubber hit the road. So how did you start taking that idea and start developing it?
Well, you know, there's a bunch of things. One is like being in the right time at the right place. So there's always a little bit of that. But then the other thing is really a lot of persistence, and then I like and a little bit of, you know, sort of scientific learning about it. So that we have, you know, we learned a lot of things from other companies or by ourselves over the years about how we do things. We have, if you come to Vendasta, we've got a thing with 10 guidelines about things that we do. You know, like be a platform. You know, we want to be the system of engagement, the system of record. We want to leverage other partners' relationships with businesses to be that platform. Yep. We've got, you know, think 10x, not 10%. Like a lot of times when you try to do something, you know, you build a piece of software. Sometimes you can make it incrementally better, to make it just 10% better, takes as much effort as to throw that whole idea out and solve it a better way. Yep. That's 100% better, you know, for the same amount of money. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, we tend to, and this is a really hard one that a lot of people fall victim to, and that is to fall in love with your customer's problems and not your solution. So we've seen so many tech companies build some whiz-bang thing that's fantastic and awesome, but doesn't really solve any problem for anybody. Mm-hmm. And so it's very problematic. So we always say you got to fall in love with your customer's problem and not your solution. And then when a customer tells you that, you know, your baby's ugly, because that's what they're doing when you say your software doesn't work. Yeah, yeah. You know, they say your baby's ugly. You say, okay, you know, because when they tell you that there's a problem, 100% of the time they're right. There's a problem for them. Mm-hmm. And then they offer their solution, and 99% of the time it's not the right solution either. So it's not an easy thing. You have to figure out what it is that you want to build and solve the solution. So like, we have 10 of those. I don't want to go through all those, but there's a lot of rules. I think you can learn innovation, and you can learn how to get there.
So how many employees are in Vendasta right now?
242, I think.
Okay, so that's a big company.
We just hired our own internal legal counsel. I'm super excited about that because I hate reading contracts.
That's awesome. So, I mean, with 240 plus employees, and then you say you got those 10 rules, and you say, look, sometimes, and you're right, like I'm a musician, and we were talking about it before. Sometimes it's easier just to start all over on a song than try to figure out what parts actually would fit in this weird chord progression. But anyway, I digress. How do you keep that culture in your business with that many employees, that they feel the freedom and yet the opportunity to do those rules? Because that's a tough thing to do, even in a small business.
No, it really is. And a lot of the companies, you know, that have done that, you know, if you read Jim Collins' Good to Great, there's a lot of ways to do that sort of servant leadership where you empower people to all be leaders and help them to lead. But it's tough. I mean, it's something we work at relentlessly. It's part of our core culture. We do things like every Friday we have an all-hands meeting where everybody comes and we spend an hour talking about everything. We're very transparent. We go through all our financials, our board presentations. They all see everything. So, you know, we work really hard at it. It's not something that comes easy. And, you know, and as you get through the company, when you start with 30 people, it's different than when it's 50, then when it's 100, then when it's 150, then when it's 200, and now 250. You know, I used to try to know everybody's face and name, say hi to them, know a little bit about, you know, how many kids they had, and I can't do it. It's not possible anymore. Yeah. Now I'm like, should that guy be here? It's like, exactly. What are you doing sneaking around here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, good intentions are only as good as the sentence, and it's harder, especially as a business grows and your customer base grows and demand grows from your customers, to keep doing those Friday meetings and stuff. Like I have enough staff that I have good intentions, and then all of a sudden the day comes where I wanted to have a meeting with them. I'm like, you know what, too busy for it. Yeah. So is that Is that the hardest part, like as for growing a business, is to keep that focus and to keep that?
Well, I mean, I think that's hard for anything to be that persistent. I was talking to, our CFOs here, and he said, that's the most expensive meeting we had. He goes, it's also the most worthwhile meeting we have. I mean, it's not a lot. He was at a company at Bacardi where they didn't have that kind of culture, and you don't have that kind of interaction and the ability to understand, to have everybody pulling in the same direction. If you have 240 people, and they're doing different things, you're not going to win the tug of war, right? So you got to keep them pulling in the right direction and have the right people on the bus.
No, that's a good analogy.
So when you started Vendasta, how long ago was that?
January 2008.
Okay, so that's 8 years old, just over 8. 9 years, right? What's 8
it's
plus?
Gonna almost be,
8 plus 9.
We're coming on to 10.
Anybody got an Excel sheet equals sum? So, I mean, that's substantial growth. So how did the business start then in 2008? Who was it, just you, or did you bring someone on right away?
No, it was me and a couple of guys came from Point 2, and I brought a few with us, and we left and we started Vendasta. So there was a core group of us that we brought some others over. I think probably we started with 7 people.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So the funny part about a business like yours is if you're not paying attention to that back end, like the tech stuff, guys like you can go right under the radar in the sense of the business in the city. So I remember the first time I heard of Vendasta would have been about 5 years ago. My brother-in-law is a big startup guy in Vancouver, and he's always doing some online business, and he's had success doing it. And he would come in and I'd be like, why do you come to Saskatoon? He's like, Vendasta. I'm like, what? Like, oh, Vendasta? That sounds like a club or something. That sounds incredible. Yeah, anyway. So now where do you see the business going now? Do you see like you've peaked, or are you always looking for opportunity to grow or to become better?
I mean, our plan of record has us going to about 290 people by the end of this year. And maybe 375 the year after. But we have to, we're about 40% R&D, and the university here is really good, and so it's starting to be recruited by other places. So we are having a bit of not a problem finding maybe necessarily new talent, but experienced talent. So we're trying to bring people in, from other places, but there might come a day when we need to. So the technical side will probably always remain in Canada. We have a really good program called SR&ED, the Scientific Research and Development Tax Credit. And we'd like to, we want to keep that software development onshore here in Canada. We may do some business stuff in the US, only because, that's where we have a lot of our business. And now we're in Australia and New Zealand and in the UK. So we might have like 1 or 2 people there, but we'll probably, stay with our main office, maybe 1 in the US. As far as development goes, though, we've been looking at, anywhere from, 2 years ago, Calgary would never have been on the map, but now, now they're offering us basically free rent if you just pay the occupancy costs for Calgary. So we may, if we can't get the talent that we need and we can't get them to come here, we may have to look to other places.
So you talked a little bit too about how when you first started, you knew there were certain industries that had needed your business the most. There was the most opportunity to disrupt what was happening. How was that just over a beer? You guys decided that? You used your AOL disk and Googled? Google wasn't even there? That takes research, that takes time. So how did you do that?
You know what, when we first started Vendasta, we had to do this work to eat. We had to eat. Everyone's got to eat. So we did this work for a heavy equipment company called Ritchie Brothers that does auctions. And so we built what they call their FAME product, and it's called Field Asset Information Management. So they take pictures of these graders and things, and it puts the photos and the information right up on the website so they can auction it. As we were doing that, we were researching, what was happening in the industry, and we knew that small business advertising was changing, in that the internet and Google and the smartphone together were providing power to the consumer in the form of information, so that when they see advertising, their only choice isn't to go to the small business, it's to research and make a decision before. And we saw that 80-90% of people were making the decision before they ever went to any kind of retailer, restaurant, car dealer, anything. Before they went there, they'd already kind of made the decision. As long as that guy didn't screw it up, they're going to go in there and make a deal, right? And so we wanted to help advertisers to bring that product to them. And so the first thing was, we're going to monetize that transaction ourselves. We're going to take that research, we're going to connect the small business directly with the consumer. And that B2C play, we realized, was really, really difficult. There's not very many Snapchats and Instagrams and Facebooks in the world, and it's hard to do from here. So we then said, well, you know, we're really good at working with business to business, and we can build a product that businesses want, and we'll leverage the distribution of people that already have it. So we use the brand, the local sales force, and the folks that are at the local reseller. We use their relationships, and we give them a platform so that they can sell to those small businesses.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit, I mean, we talked about how Vendasta grew and how it grew and where it's come from. And you kind of talked a little bit about Calgary and other opportunities around. Like, being in Saskatoon, what are you here just because you came to school here and that's where the business started, or has the city and provincial government, and you talked even federal with the SRED, has that stuff been a value to you in our province, or is it just by circumstance? And where do you see the business going forward? Is Saskatchewan? Saskatchewan?
He's not from here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Is Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, is that a place that you always see your business being out of? And where do you see it going and just the business climate in Saskatchewan?
Well, I mean, that's a complicated question, right? So when we first left Point 2, and we were sitting in the garage at my house, we talked a lot about, should we open this thing in Vancouver? We went back and forth a lot. And we did it in a scientific way, you know, the Ben Franklin method, all the positives and all the negatives. And there's a lot of positives here. Well, for one, we were here.
Yeah, fair enough.
There's something to be said about already being somewhere.
Yeah.
Two, you know, because we had houses and things,
Yeah.
families. But two, we knew there was a good university here. We knew there was talent here. And we didn't have as much competition for that talent. There wasn't a lot of exciting things going on in the tech space for that talent. If you're in Vancouver, you got some challenges because you had Electronic Arts was there and a bunch of other people, and it's challenging to attract the talent. The other thing is, you know, having been at Point 2, we traveled quite a bit, and we knew what other tech companies faced in terms of commutes and pay and how far your dollar goes and housing costs. And, you know, anyone here in Saskatoon, we can get to work in 2 or 3 songs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I measure that always in songs. I can get to work in 2 songs.
Yeah.
And it's important to us for that sort of quality of life. But it was also...
2 or 3 songs from the 80s.
Yeah.
If you're a radio
Or
fan.
maybe just one Led Zeppelin song.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
But yeah, so there was a lot of good reasons to stay here, and we decided to stay here. And you know, the people here are tremendous too. I think there's a lot of parallels to companies like WordPerfect, if you want to take you way back to when you loaded in your floppy disks. But they got Butt and Novell. They're both out of Utah, right?
Okay.
And there's a hard work ethic from, you know, farm kids and people that work hard. And I think that Saskatchewan's a great place to be in terms of that. And I would like to stay here as much as we can. Some things you might, you know, for our business stuff, we will have to be in the U.S. at some point, and we already have folks down there. We got Tim where's Tim? He's from San Diego, all the way from. He didn't think there was a place like this in Saskatoon. He said now he knows there's at least one. Yeah. And we got a guy in Augusta, and we have people in different parts of the U.S. And we probably, you know, I'd hope we can stay here. I hope we can make it work here.
There are some incredible businesses in our city that no one has a clue that they're leading the way in the market all over the world. And I'm glad that you can share your story with us. It's great exposure for people watching, for people here to maybe at least go home with a better sense of pride that we got some stuff going. And I really just wanted to say thanks so much for taking time on a beautiful day to share your story. And we really appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming.